As the world is witnessing a pandemic, it is important to know the stories which are playing out in the background, stories of effort, stories of passion in every stream of life. And while there are a lot of people working hard in different streams of life, for example, the warriors on the front line of medical services, we can only do our part sitting at home and going out only if we must, and that too responsibly. Of course, just sitting home can be strenuous without much to do, and it's been a long 4 5 months for all of us sitting at home. And there is one thing which is synonymous with all our lives when it comes to words like effort and words like passion: sport. Sport makes so much difference to our lives, be it any sport, be it cricket, football, Formula One, just sport. Playing it, watching it, discussing it, talking about it, analyzing it, writing it, where then whenever there is live sport to indulge in, it makes our lives just so much better. So two keywords here again: effort and passion. They are the cornerstone of every story in sport, and whether it is on the field, behind the scenes, those two words are keystones. And with this, I welcome to this new podcast or a wadcast. It's called The Curve Ball with me, sports journalist and broadcaster Chetan Narula, as I try to search for and identify with different stories of effort and passion in the field of sport. And of course, I'm only happy to bring them to you. This podcast will be all about sport, but not just cricket, all sports, all people behind them, the people in front of them, the people in sports entertainment, the people in sports business, sports marketing, everything in front, behind, sideways, everywhere, all things sport. There's no limitation on what sort of stories we will discuss on this podcast. My endeavor will be to find as many such stories as possible and bring them to you. And with much joy and happiness, then I am happy to announce this first episode in hopefully what will be a very long run for this podcast. And I'm in conversation with someone who identifies these two words: effort and passion. He has a vast experience in working with different brands in client servicing and marketing. His last corporate position was as marketing manager at Rado India. And then he found his calling, that calling of passion, and he put so much effort into it. Today, he is the co-founder and CEO of one of the fastest growing esport communities, Rooter. I welcome to the show Piyush Kumar. Piyush, how's your Sunday going? How have you been? How are you going through this current phase of life, to be honest, really?
Hey Chetan, thanks so much for inviting me, and I'm privileged. Firstly, to be your first guest in this new podcast or vodcast. As you mentioned, ever since you first told me about it, I was very excited. Nobody has had a conversation like this with me, because I think we are still very early in my journey to be able to speak about my life. But I'm happy to speak about sports at any point in time. So thank you so much for making me a part of it. Yeah, to start with your first question, yeah, it's very interesting. Last 4 5 months have been, I think, an eye opener for all of us to understand life in a very deep and a very close way. All of us have just sort of stood and we have looked around of how things are, which wasn't probably happening for the last so many years that we were running around our professional, personal life, etc. So yeah, it's very interesting, both at the personal front as well as at the work front.
Well, first of all, let's start off, with some background into your life. Can you just tell us about, you were in client servicing, you were in the marketing manager of Rado India. You've told me that sport, or in fact told our viewers and listeners, that sport plays a very crucial part of your life. So tell us about your background a little bit, how sport has been important to you, how it has been crucial to you. What draws you to sport, really?
Yeah, okay, and I can start from my childhood experience and all, right, because
Yeah.
it's a usual part. Okay, great. So yes, so sports is perhaps one of the first things I got attached to, or I got passionate about ever since I was a kid. In my childhood, there weren't too many toys around. All that we used to look forward to was playing a sport after school late in the evening, and I used to play football and cricket at that point in time. Cricket, of course, was the first sport I started playing. But my influence of sports largely, started with my grandfather, who was a very, very mad, and I'll call it mad because he was like that, sports fan. He introduced me to tennis. And I think tennis was the first sport I started watching as a fan on the television. Before that, I had never even been to a stadium or never even followed a match. And I think 1990 French Open and Wimbledon, which I think Wimbledon was, if I'm not wrong, Stephen Edward won. It was the first time I started following a sport. For the first 10 years of my life, it was very in and out. Um, and yeah, and across my, throughout my childhood, when I was in hostel, I would follow, cricket very madly. So the literature which was available at that point in time was largely for cricket, except Sports Star, which used to do multiple sports, and perhaps some newspapers which used to cover different sports. It was all about cricket. So there was Sports Star. There was a couple of Hindi magazines called Cricket Samrat, Cricket
Yeah.
Bharati. I mean, you won't believe in my teenage years, I used to remember the score of each and every batsman or the stats of a bowler for good those 10 12 years, right? I was so much into it and stuff. And parallelly, and when I was in hostel, I used to play pretty much all the sport except volleyball and swimming. I mean, I used to do, but I wasn't good at it. So yeah, hockey, I kind of represented Delhi at one of the tournaments at a junior level, and then I played almost all the sport for my house. So right from there till when I started my working life, uh, I continued playing. I played cricket. Professionally from my advertising agency, as you mentioned, and then for the last almost 10 years, I've been playing badminton, squash, and during the lockdown, I've picked up tennis. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sports in my life, but I mean, just to give you an idea that for me, my life is constructed around playing sport, because for me that's meditation, that's my workout, that's pretty much everything that relaxes me. And following a sport, uh, ranging from tennis being my number one sport to follow, followed by cricket, followed by football, badminton, couple of other sports. This is what it is all about.
Quite interesting because I can really identify, because in a way we're both 80s 90s kid. The
Yeah,
90s was the start of, for many of us, really, for that connect with sport, whether it's cricket, football, tennis, Olympics. I remember watching Olympics events, the World Cups, Asia Cups. I was really a huge fan of Dhanraj Pillai. You watched hockey a
yeah,
lot.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
Asia Cups and South Asia Cups, those uh, though those tournaments really lit it up for us. And then, of course, you had Olympics and cricket, and Sachin Tendulkar was becoming a phenomenon. And then you had Pete Sampras, Andre Agassi, who were just lighting up the tennis scene. Martina Hingis, she was a fan favorite with so many of us growing up. So I
True,
remember, and
true.
I actually can identify when you say that, you remember the scores, because we had those trump cards with us. We used to make those
Yeah.
scrapbooks, collect pictures and everything. And you know for every 80s and 90s kid, to be honest with you, and that is the boon of not having digital devices all around us, perhaps, because we were able to create those memories in a way, and go on collecting pictures and scrapbooks and scorecards. And it's good to identify with sport as a passion. What would you say, you mentioned Wimbledon and French Open as the two tournaments that really hooked you onto sport, and your grandfather had a major influence on you as well. So what would you say were the two or one or two major events or major athletes who really inspired you at that time?
Without doubt, Sachin Tendulkar, I think for all of us, he was literally the torchbearer of, making us passionate about anything to do with sports. And not just because of the way he used to play, but also because of the way he used to conduct himself, the way he literally carried, I'll say, Indian sport, not just cricket, for a very very long time. And yeah, I'm a huge fan of him. I mean, my days were literally good or bad depending on how he was playing. I mean, and I think it's for
Yeah.
most of the country. So he was certainly up there. And then when it comes to the second sportsman, I mean, initially Peter was somebody who inspired me a lot. I really really like to. I mean, there was always in tennis there is always a generation between two players, right? It's always a rivalry between two players. So it was Sampras versus Agassi at in 90s, and then Federer versus Nadal, and now it is Djokovic versus pretty much everybody. So Sampras was the first one that I started following, but ever since Roger Federer came, I don't think anybody else has really really affected me, or kind of inspired me by the way especially he has played. So yeah, if I was to pick two names, it's Tendulkar and Federer. And I know it's very generic, but fact is that that is how it is
And
when it comes to the top two people. Yeah.
no, absolutely, I agree. It's a fact of life for everybody, especially in the Southeast Asia or subcontinent. Really, that it's a fact of life. Sachin Tendulkar played a huge part of our lives, and then there were everybody who was just perhaps revolving around him. We were trying to find those likenesses. I mentioned Dhanraj Pillai. For some others, it was Pete Sampras. There were many football players at that time who were somebody like a David Beckham, who probably got my association with football started. Did you have a liking for football, maybe, and maybe a pivotal character from football, maybe?
Yeah, no, so this is surprising and something that I also, when I look back at my life, I sometimes feel this is a very surprising fact that I picked up football very, very late. I mean, I remember following 2002 Football World Cup, then 2006 as well. And then my interest started growing from 2010 South Africa World Cup, which is when the Vuvuzela and everything came in. And then uh, I had to pick a European team, and I started following Manchester United. I think more out of popularity than anything else. And then yeah, for the last of whatever 8-10 years, I've been following. But I have to admit that football is number three in terms of my interest area. I'm still not very good at it. I really want to pick it up because I think all the football fans are very blessed because they have something which goes week on week for almost 11, 12 months. I mean, if you include transfer window, perhaps the entire year. And and in my team, I mean, at Rooter, there are so many of these football fans who will follow their teams and players day in and day out, and I feel very left out because I'm still not as close to the sport as they are, and I think and in if I look back at my life over the last whatever 30-40 years in terms of if there is one sport I think which is great to follow, it is football. There is also tennis because it's a tour and it happens over a good 9-10 months. But there is nothing like football. I mean, I've seen people, they go mad behind the team, and the kind of passion they show behind a sport is crazy. But I wish so now, just to answer your question, I'm literally trying to be a student of football. I subscribe to the Athletic. I am trying to read 10 articles, 12 articles every week just to get closer to the sport. And I hope in the next 10 years I become even half of all these people who are around me.
Just pick another club. It's not the best time to have Manchester United as
I
your
know.
favorite club at the
I
moment.
I, I,
and
I think I think they'll make a comeback. I sincerely feel that the current lot is doing fairly well. I mean, with Messi probably joining Manchester City, things will look very different. But City and Liverpool, anyways, are a different league. The idea is
Yeah.
to, because I've seen in football, unlike any other sport, it takes a couple of years to build a good team.
Yeah.
And I think Ole is in the right direction. But yeah, it's good. I mean, I think the good thing about Manchester United is that there is so much of history around the club. There is so many. You have so many fans around you, and somewhere, even in sorrow or even in the losses that you've seen over the last 6-7 years, there's so many people around you who can feel you, rather than clubs that people perhaps don't care. But I'm good. I think I'll still go ahead and follow United, and I think their time is about to come. I think they'll do well. Yeah.
Well, once upon a time, I used to be a Manchester United fan. Over the last three,
Yeah.
4 years, just fallen out of love with the club, the way it's run. This is not a Manchester United podcast. We're not going to go too deep into it. And yeah, kudos to you
Yeah. Yeah.
if you feel that United are on the rise. I feel a little differently about it. I think the club is really poorly run. But the one
Yeah.
word that I really picked up in what you said, when you talk about football, really is passion. Because yes,
Yeah.
it's a different passion when you're sitting miles away, like we're sitting in India and we're following Manchester United. I have grown watching David Beckham and worshipping Sir Alex Ferguson, and I'm a Mourinho holic. Really, I'm a Jose Mourinho fan. Really love the guy, really love his understanding of football. um but again, sitting miles away, and our only connect with these football players is watching them on television, is talking and analyzing on online and with our friends and everything. But I've toured as a cricket journalist. I've toured overseas. I've been to a few football games in Europe. I've been very lucky to have that opportunity. The passion, that's the key word here. The passion they have for football there, it's really a way of life. And that's what I had spoken about: sport being a way of life, sport being a discourse of life. And if there's a prime example of it, it is the football clubs in Europe, the football fans, the
Yeah.
way they worship. And it's not just Liverpool and Manchester United. I've been to Camp Nou, seen how Barcelona run their club. It's, forget the saga with Messi that is going around now. It is a way of life. FC Barcelona, you go to Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, you go to Italy, AC Milan, or you even go to Ireland or Scotland, Celtic, the Northern Irish clubs, or Celtic and Rangers in Scotland. I mean, it's a way of life, and uh, it's a totally different feeling having this club. And like you so aptly put, that football fans are blessed because it's almost non-stop 11 months of the year, week on week on week. And if you add the transfer club, everybody's okay, which player is coming in, which player is coming in, which player is coming in. And being a Manchester United fan, no player is coming in, so you know what the excruciating pain is.
True,
But yeah,
true, true.
but yeah,
Yeah.
but the bottom line, again, like you said, is passion. And this is something that we're going to talk about a bit more. You've spoken about passion for cricket, for tennis, for football. Tell us about your passion for router. Was there a moment really which which came in your life and you were like, okay, I'm done with the corporate life, I need to do something of my own, and that something led to the starting point of router?
Oh no, so interesting. So I'll tell you one very interesting anecdote about my entrepreneurial journey. So first I'll start with the day I actually turned an entrepreneur, and I kind of announced it to my family and to my friends and everybody that the day I told everybody that I'm actually starting a sports tech firm, or I'm actually or I'm becoming a sports entrepreneur, nobody around me was surprised, right? They were not surprised that I wanted to become an entrepreneur, more so that I wanted to do something in sports. Now, the reason is that, I mean, given my parents have seen me as a child, and then when I was growing up, with my friends, with my wife, everybody saw that I was very passionate about what I was doing. So for anybody, and I was very, I believe in one fact that if you're dreaming of something, if there's a vision, you should put it out there to people, because then you put yourself under pressure and you try and go for it. I mean, this is a very simple hack, growth hack, life hack, I'll call it, that works. For example, I'm trying to do three more things after router or during router or whenever it happens, and I've already announced it to the world. You would have probably picked it up from my Twitter bio as well, that there are few things that I'm very very that I want to do, and similarly in sports, I wanted to do the same. So how it happened is that I was always looking for a career in sports. I wanted to work with sports management agencies. I wanted to work with sports team, but for some reason I was just not able to exactly figure out what I want to do. Because I was working very closely with all these people. During my career in advertising and marketing, I always felt it's still not there. I mean, I'm still doing better than what they're doing. So it eventually led to a situation where in 2010, I was called for a marketing conference in Goa. And they said, you need to make a presentation on something to do with marketing. And I said that, okay, I'll not present anything about my brand. Let me present something about sports and how it can affect brands, or what is the relationship between sports and brands. So sports is my passion. Brands is something that I've picked up my skills. And that presentation went off very well. It was a 1 hour presentation, and it had 1 hour 20 minutes of Q&A, right? And that too being the last session of the day. So when I came out of the stage, multiple people came up to me, and they liked what I was trying to present. Those are very early days of IPL. I was essentially taking examples about how brands can ride on sports, what is the derivative, etc., etc. And then few people actually came back to me and said that, why don't you start something of your own? And I still remember the breakfast next day to that is the time when some 2-3 people told me, and that is the day, the first time the thought came to me that perhaps I can be an entrepreneur. And then the early 2010s, or the last decade, is when the entire startup industry was starting to form. I became, quite mad about the way Flipkarts and Grofers and Paytm and all these, wonderful companies are coming up, all these entrepreneurs. And I started following the startup journey as closely as I was following cricket in 1990s, right? I used to read pretty much everything about it. And that is the time I realized that, this entire gift that today's generation has of creating something totally new, of creating their own legacy without bothering about what is their educational background, how old they are, what is their bank balance, etc., is something that was wonderful. And I really wanted to be a part of it. I turned down one of a very senior positions that was offered to me while I was at Rado for one of the luxury car brands. And the day I turned it down, I said the only reason I'm turning it down is that someday I'll start a company, and that is how in 2016 it started. So just to and between 2010 and 2016, I worked on multiple ideas. I started meeting people. They used to run it down. I went back, tried something else, but it was always around the word fan. I always knew that whatever I want to do has to be around the word fan, because that is where I'm closest to. So this is the background about Router. If you want me to talk about what Router is and how it all started, I can do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll get there, because it's interesting, because
yeah,
when you talk about sports entrepreneurship, or people who are related to sports, who don't necessarily go into the arena, into the field, but want to do something related to it, what you've said is applicable to so many people, that okay, they're working in a corporate sector, and suddenly out of the blue they're making a presentation, and the realization dawns on them that, okay, yes, I want to do this. And also the fact that when you tell people around you that, okay, this is what I'm going to do now, nobody's surprised, because that's what they
correct.
know you. That's how they know you. They know that this is your core, this is your passion, that sport is your passion. And I can easily identify with it, because I've had a journey in, background is corporate, education wise at least, and then going into sport. And again, nobody around me was really surprised that I'm pursuing the career that I am. But in your way, again, like I said, it's such a parallel path, and it's such an identical
Yeah,
trait. Like, let's call it a trait for people like us, that it's no different really, because it's so easily identifiable. But first time, now we'll talk a little more about Router. And the first time I heard the name Router, a very close friend of mine from school, Amrit Raj, he told me about Router, and he told me, this is the app, this is how it's coming up. And I was like, okay, why the name Router? And this is a question I really
yeah.
specifically want to put to you. Why the name Router? You said, yes, because you're a fan, so it has to be from a point of view of a fan. And I totally understand, having seen the app myself, having studied it as well. But why the name Router, first of all?
Yeah, very interesting. So yeah, there is and I'm glad you're asking it, because I've still not got a single opportunity to talk about it in detail, and there is a story behind it. So very simple. So when we started in 2016, the basic purpose of Router, or the vision, or rather the mission of the company, was that we wanted to connect fans with each other. Very simple. That is how we started. We have tried 100 things which haven't worked, and probably few things are working right now, and maybe this will also not work in the long term. Maybe we'll do something else. But the core agenda is that we want fans to connect with each other, right? So when I was looking at different name options, I figured, I mean, I looked at all the options which are available in the market. Most of the companies were either had fan as the word in them. Most of the startups had fan, or they had sports in the name, right? So when you have sports or fan, you are bound to get missed in the entire run, because I mean, there are multiple examples. So
Yeah,
most,
yeah,
I think 90% of the sports companies have either fan or sports in them, right?
yeah, yeah,
So the idea was to not go for these, right?
yeah,
Then I started looking at, and I started, and since I come from a branding, rather a sort of a marketing background, I understand the essence and the importance of brand name. We have still not realized it. We are still, hopefully in next 10 to 12 months, we'll be in a situation where we'll be up there on television or doing multiple things that people will remember, or there'll be a zing around the name. But the idea was to go for a name which is one word, which stands for fan. And amongst multiple stories I read about, so if you actually go and search around the stories of brand names, you'll see there are multiple interesting stories, right? Out of which, the story which really which I really liked, was the story of Twitter. So when Twitter was formed, the core idea of the product was that they wanted to create something that will buzz and the news will come out of your phone, something like that. That was the idea of Twitter, right? So there were multiple names, and then eventually it came down to Twitter. And the reason the founding team picked Twitter was because Twitter, have you tweeted yet? How many tweets? So there is a verb, there is an adjective, there is a noun. So everything is an extension of the word, right? And there is a zing to it. So I secretly prayed that I wish a name like that comes out. And when I was researching, I used to use a very interesting term, and a very interesting tool, which is called visual. What is it called? It's called visual thesaurus, which basically, when you put a word, there are links and all that, right? So I came across a word Router, and Router literally means a sports fan, right?
yeah,
And I was shocked. Now, what is it that you do when you come across a name like that? You immediately check if somebody has taken it, and nobody else had taken it except a US company which is called Roto Router. which is basically a plumbing or a house service sort of a company. Which I was like, okay, it's okay. I mean, they have router.com, which is fine, but there is everything else is available. And then we went for it. And then when we went for it, we realized routers, are you rooting for your team? How many, have you rooted yet, etc. So everything fell in place. And the logo is something that we took literally 36 hours to make. There's a very close friend of mine who's still in advertising. He helped me get this made, and immediately I sort of approved it because it had infinity symbol, which basically means infinite number of people, and the red stands for passion, blue stands for sky. So I think everything fell in place, and yeah, I'm very proud of the name. I hope uh, this finds its place in the sun. We become decently big to for people to remember the name, but yeah, really got lucky.
Oh no, of course. I wish you all the luck going ahead in your journey. And in fact, now that you've you know just described it with so much passion and energy, let's tell our viewers and listeners where you are in your journey. You've sent me the dossier that I studied a bit. 40,000 downloads, a couple of them on my phones, 3.25 million
No,
active users, which is India only. Am I right in that? Is that India only?
yeah,
3.25 million
no.
users?
So we have already crossed 10 million users long time back. What At this stage, as we are sitting right now, we have more than 5 million active users every month, and
Okay.
we are stated to cross 20 million by the end of IPL. Right? What I told you is that we are adding close to 50,000 to 70,000 new downloads every day on the app. The app is one of the highest rated apps on Google Play Store, 4.8. We are amongst the top three sports app, etc., etc. But uh, let me tell you where we are. So in the last 4 years, we tried multiple features, multiple ways in which we can connect fans, and failed in many of them. Survived as a company through many near-death moments, as they call them in startups. But we sort of hit a goal last year when we decided to create this community around content. And when it comes to creating the community around content, we decided to focus on audio and video as the medium. So we said no text, no image. I mean, they can be still there, but the entire world and the entire movement on digital is going to be around audio and video. And we started creating it around that. And that is how, the sports. So we are basically, you can say, a social platform for sports where users talk to each other through live audio and video, or audio and video in general. And then, of course, after COVID, and I can talk about it in detail. So after COVID, we got into gaming. We added game streaming as a content, which has done phenomenally well for us. And now we are launching esports. So yeah, that's how it stands.
Um, you mentioned the growing number of users. The second quarter I was reading up was really second quarter of 2020 was really good for you. And of
Yeah,
course, there was a
yeah.
lockdown. Did the lockdown period help in that? Just throwing a lightweight question towards you.
Yeah. Very interesting. So when the lockdown happened, we were all prepared, and like all other sports companies, we were all prepared to really push our growth in IPL. See, IPL is the biggest window that any sports company gets in India, right? That is the
Yeah.
time you can go from X to whatever you want to. But IPL didn't happen, right? And we were a sports platform, and while we had a lot of content being generated, because we are also about playing sport at home, multiple games, etc., that people play, we realized that we immediately need to find our extension of the product, or will become obsolete, and that is how we got into gaming. And we realized that gaming and esports are the logical extension of sports. Esports, in fact, is a part of Asian Games, and hopefully will be a part of multiple other sports, tournaments, etc. that happens. So we basically launched our game streaming tool within 5 weeks of lockdown. So while a lot of people around the world were figuring out how to do things, and they were, doing whatever, the entire team at Router worked literally 17 to 18 hours in the first 5 weeks of lockdown to launch this feature. We immediately started creating a community around it. And in the last 2.5 months, we have seen unprecedented growth. I mean, I could have never imagined in my wildest of dreams that we'll see something like this.
A question at this juncture, which surely arises because you realized that early on that you wanted Router to become a social app of sports fans where they can come and they can collate themselves, they can interact with themselves through audio and video. So content was your basic core platform, basic core of your platform. Then
True,
you
true.
decided to maneuver towards e-gaming, right? But there are a lot of fantasy sports apps in the market today as well. I don't want to take names at the moment, but you know who I am talking about. And Indian
Yeah,
market is buzzing right now. There is a company which is a unicorn right now. It's buzzing. Dream 11, let's just say.
yeah,
And
of course, yeah.
yeah, you have to take the name of a unicorn, right? So Dream 11, it's inviting billion-dollar investments, its latest rounds, and the fact that they are now, one of the principal sponsors of the upcoming season of the IPL, it has raised their valuation to 2.5 billion. So my question to you here is that when you were pivoting towards e-gaming, why not choose fantasy? Was there a special decision that, okay, we do not want to go down this path and rather we want to go down the e-gaming path? And why e-gaming?
Yeah, very interesting question. This is a great opportunity for me to explain what we are doing. So when we started in 2016, and we have been following this space very, very closely. You can bucket sports industry or sports tech industry into three parallel. One is the OTT, which is Hotstar, Sony Live, now FanCode, multiple other platforms. Second is the fantasy or the real money gaming, largely. And third is the content space, right? Now, we always knew you can't compete in OTT. Hotstar and Sony Live are big. FanCode is going to compete with them and already is trying to compete with them because of the might that they have, enough funds, and they've seen amazing success. The second space of real money gaming and fantasy. So we had started almost at the same time when Dream 11 was starting to get recognized. We could have easily got into it, and we could also have been. I remember a couple of other platforms. Again, I don't want to name them. They started around the same time, and we always knew two things. Number one, real money gaming is not the skill set of me and my co-founder Dipesh. We admitted that the kind of skills it requires to build a real money gaming platform, we are not good at it, and therefore will not get into it. And secondly, somewhere we could see that Dream 11 will eventually end up becoming what it is, and then it will become a play of who has more funds. So we never wanted to get into it. I mean, if we would have got into it, I'm not sure if I would have been here talking about it. The third vertical, which is content, is the strength for both me and Dipesh. And for me, because I'm a glutton for content, I also spend a lot of time on social media, and I build my career around learnings from social media. And also I realized that with the media platforms which are there in the country right now, particularly on cricket, they have just remained the same over the last decade. They have just not changed, right? People are just going to them because they are habituated to consuming the content in a certain way. And the opportunity was to change the way people create and consume content. So while the users were creating content in a very fragmented way on Facebook, WhatsApp, etc., which could have been made a very much more organized through a platform like a new platform, more so from the perspective of overall content which is available. I mean, you go and read on any platform, you'll read 2 3 articles, you'll bounce off, right? And you'll say, okay, what do I do now? Then you will go on WhatsApp, you will go to your cricket group, you'll go on Twitter, you'll search. I mean, it's so much of effort for you to kind of read. I mean, I wish somebody launches a platform like an Athletic in India, which goes so deep into different things, and I can read and know about it. So so we decided that we'll not compete in OTT, will not compete in RMG and fantasy. We will want to redefine the space of content, and everything that we have done is coming from there. Now, just to answer your second question, why esports or why gaming? Because when you look at an audience set, when you look at sports audience, we said, okay, these guys are doing well. Now that sports is not happening for 6 months, what is it that this guy is doing? I mean, we looked around, we asked some 1,000 people around in the end of March, early April, and we figured all sports fans also have an extension towards gaming. Now, whether they're playing a FIFA or a stick cricket, or they're playing a PUBG, or they're playing a Free Fire, the intersection of sports fans and gaming fans is very high, is basically very big, sorry. And that is the reason we thought we'll get into it. But the commonality between the two streams is content. So we'll stick to something that we have learned a bit, and we want to learn more and execute on our platform.
It's interesting that you talk about content so passionately, because I remember when Facebook first came and the way the Facebook, when it was the Facebook back then, and the way it came up, the whole idea behind creating something like a Facebook was people would share their own content. They would share their own statuses. They would share their own pictures, their articles that they're reading or writing or whatever. And now it has slowly moved on towards videos, and probably towards e-gaming as well, like you mentioned, because it is a uh, growing synergy for a lot of sports related apps or digital apps, really. Were you in a way also inspired by that? Because I'm not saying you were inspired by Facebook, inspired by that, uh, by that feeling or that understanding, really, that people who are so influenced by sports, they would be happy to share their content on their own without you asking for it on a platform, if you provided them that platform.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, one of the learnings that we took initially was that, and I was surprised when I read this data when I was starting Router or in the early days of Router, that I mean, unless you get into it, you don't realize, because I was one of those, that only 1 to 1.5% of people on social media create content. The rest, 98, 99% people consume content. So I was always the one who used to tweet a lot. I have some, I don't know, 40, 50,000 tweets on Twitter or whatever. I used to do a lot. I'm even on Instagram. I used to be very active. Now, so what I realized is that the game of content is not as much about the people who are consuming it. It's about the people who are creating it, right? And if you look at TikTok, if you look at Facebook, multiple other platforms, what they did is they focused on giving tools and giving different reasons for people to create content around which the community will start getting built, right? So to answer your question, whether it was Facebook, Twitter has inspired me a lot. I am a huge, huge fan of the platform. I think, uh, again, a great way for somebody who's, has had a very average upbringing like myself to pick up a platform where I could express myself and grow as an individual. Twitter has really helped me, and it's one of the best platforms to connect with people that you can't imagine connecting in normal life. I mean, I'm connected to you through that, right? I've been
Yeah,
following your
absolutely.
work for so long over there, so it's a great platform. So whether it was Twitter, whether it is, I really like the way Share Chat came up in the last couple of years, 3 years, and I think ShareChat was the perhaps the first example of, and I'm happy to take the name of a platform like ShareChat, because they were the first platform of India who came up and showed to the industry that they can be something built for India by India. Because till then it was all about Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, Snapchat, etc. So ShareChat was perhaps the first platform that went and made something for tier three, tier four. Then a lot of Chinese came in, and then we got a lot of confidence out of it, saying that okay, we can also go ahead and make something for this parallel universe, or a particular segment. And yeah, hopefully we are starting to see a lot of traction, investors, sports, companies, it's, kind of like what we are building. Yeah.
Right. Just want to go back to what you said about e-gaming, that there is a synergy there between e-gamers and people who are creating content, people who are watching sport, that they themselves want to be in the middle of the action and they want to telecast that. Are you a bit or apprehensive? I'm not going to say worried that e-gaming may just take over the content bit of Router. Is that an apprehension at some point?
No, not at all. It's not an apprehension anymore. It's a reality. That is how things will be. Because, and I'll tell you why. Because one of the things that again we have learned while building Router over the last 4.5 years is that sports always comes with a huge surge or a huge spurt of it's like it will go up, it will come down, it will go up, it will come down, which essentially becomes a problem in the business model for a lot of companies, because you tend to invest very a lot during a big tournament, and then you get your users, and then those users go away. And it happens with everybody. All big companies, all small companies go through this, highs and lows. And this, therefore, for a small company, and a lot of companies started around us, and I realized that the importance of everybody surviving was that it's not about how you do when there's a big tournament. It's about what you do when
Yeah.
the tournament is not happening. How do you hold your audience? Because you have spent 10, 20, 50 rupees to get one of those users, and as soon as tournament gets over, they delete the app and they move on. And then imagine the kind of business loss you're making for yourself, your shareholders, your investors. So the idea was to figure out something that will hold people for a long time. And I think to a large extent, our content pivot helped that. To answer your question about how this will go forward, I think the way I see Router growing over the next 3, 4, 5 years is that gaming and esports is going to be one content stream that will hook people throughout here. This will become the core, or the center of the big circle we are talking about. And sports will get built around it. So when a sports event will happen, a lot of this audience will go up, do sports, come back again, focus on gaming, so on and so forth. And when sports will happen, a lot of people will come in, they will do sports, they'll perhaps go out or stay back because there is gaming and there is so much for them to do. There is gaming and esports, both is going to come in. I mean, gaming by game, I mean game streaming, not gaming. We are game streaming and esports. And I think if you look at it very closely, and one of the companies that we are very inspired with is also Twitch. Twitch, interestingly, got built around gaming first, and now they are adding sports on top of it, right? For us, we got into it using sports, and now gaming is sort of now building a very core feature of it. So I personally think that for us to build a very what do you call, sticky sports product, gaming and esports is going to play a very important role, and that is why we see that now we have perhaps hit something which has a good product market fit.
It's very interesting you say that, and you brought the name Twitch, and I was going to ask you about Twitch, but before I get to that, it's very interesting the way you talked about the circle really with sport and between people coming in, playing, participating, going away, but maybe someone staying behind and being participant of the esports. Because you look at the English Premier League, there's an small EPL, just like e-gaming, there's an EPL going on side by side. And on Twitter, they keep on updating us. This Bournemouth have beaten Liverpool, and this guy has made his own team, and he's beating somebody who's playing with Arsenal, like that. And then you have Formula One drivers who are now participating. They're sitting and playing online games, and regular fans can interact with them via Twitch. They can interact them, and they can play with them, and they can race them. You have footballers who are coming in racing in those Formula One races. And while the Formula One season had not started, this Formula One season was
Yeah.
keeping all the motorheads busy, really. Very interesting that you mentioned Twitch. I want to ask here, Router, is it still in India? Is it still national? Are you looking to
Yeah.
diversify and probably attempt a worldwide access?
No, it's a very interesting question. I remember you asked this question before. I'm sorry I didn't answer it at that point in time. No, so the core is India. I think if you look at the addressable market in India, it's crazy, right? We have 400 million plus sports fans online. And during lockdown, before lockdown, they used to say 250 million gamers. I'm sure, and I'm convinced it's reaching to the stage of 350 million users, right? So there is a huge addressable market of about 500 million people in India. And I think that's a great market to go after. So while we have, you won't believe, I mean, a couple of months back, we faced a very interesting situation where there were so many users from Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, all these places who wanted to join Router, but we didn't have the login feature to allow them. And they used to, write so many times that, can you please fix this? And we fixed that, and we saw a lot of people. So almost 10-15% of users who have joined us over the past 2 months are from Nepal and Bangladesh. So to answer your question, we definitely see it as a product that can go into different markets, perhaps starting with maybe a Southeast Asia market, or going to UK is something that I've studied very closely. And I think there's a huge overlap because of Indian diaspora, very cricket centric, or rather very sports centric, country. Also English as a language, so language is not a barrier. And this is one of the reasons that Router is the only company that got selected for an Adidas family-backed accelerator called Lead Sports, and we are still the only company. And the reason we joined that is because at some point in time, we see us becoming a global company. But what I've learned from the startup journeys, and I've learned from so many successful entrepreneurs in India, is that first you need to find your footing in your core market, and get to a stage where you have figured all the issues that can come out with your product. Once you have done that, then you go out and talk to your investors or new investors and sort of branch out into new markets. If you do things parallelly, unless there is a strong use case, the chances of failure are very high.
Okay, two final questions about Router, and because we are stretching the conversation. First one, of course, when you talk about e-gaming, have you reached out to e-gaming platforms? When I say e-gaming platforms, I'm talking about somebody like EA Sports, who are so much into gaming. They make Formula One, they make FIFA, they make cricket, they make baseball, NBA, so many games, sports related games that they make, or somebody or any other platform which is into sports games. Have you reached out to them? Is that an association that you could perhaps foresee?
Well, to be very honest, we have not reached out to companies who are into sports gaming. We want to do that. But since it's just been about 2.5 months that we have been building this community and building this, building this particular part of content. For now, the two or the three most popular games on Router are PUBG Lite, and Free Fire. It's a huge community. Between the three games, you can easily cover about 120 to 130 million users in India. And for now, we are working with their parent companies, their publishers. The idea is that once we have again figured that we have made a decent product for this community, is the time when we are going to look out for esports, people who make stick cricket, multiple other platforms. In fact, there are multiple Indian companies which are making kind of kick-ass sports games. But I am admitting here that no, we have not. I mean, there are multiple people who are playing different games and they're uploading content or streaming content. But for us, this is a huge audience that we're trying to address. So we first want to make something which is very good for this audience. Once we have done that, we will move on to the sports games.
Well, there's also PlayStation and Microsoft's Xbox. They
Yeah,
are also venturing into they're coming together. The future is that they're going to amalgamate. For now, you don't have PlayStation and Xbox. You can't play with each other. You have to have the same console. They're trying to bring those two communities together, and they're going to do that online. There is no other way. You can't do it
absolutely.
offline. You have to do it online. So again, maybe somebody like Router or Twitch, can get in there. The other very quickly, just want to ask, we were talking of the lockdown. It was tough looking for sports news at that time. But one thing that really caught my eye was Router raising a Series A round of 1.7 million USD. You had Paytm, you had Adidas, the Adidas,
Family
the
office, yeah.
family lead, if I'm right, and
Yeah,
other
lead.
some other capital funds coming in. First of all, congratulations for that. And
Thank you.
also, just tell us, it was a battle of perseverance, maybe sleepless nights. Just take us through that whole experience. You went into e-gaming. Perhaps that was the reason, they were very happy to come in and
No.
put in the money. Just explain us the whole thing. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. I mean, I'll never forget those 6 to 8 weeks. So here is how it was happening. BTM, Vijay particularly was very excited about what we were building. He had reached out, and his colleagues, Sudhanshu, Madhur, a lot of, I mean, amazing team. They reached out to us. We started building on the round. Everything was going very well until COVID happened. And the first thing an entrepreneur thinks is that what if this round doesn't happen? Because then there is an existential crisis for the company.
Yeah.
And then everybody knew sports is going to stop, and we are a sports platform. So how do we sort of address it? I would have to completely give credit to all my investors who had given us a term sheet or who had approved this funding round, and surprisingly, nobody even talked about doing anything with valuation or putting in less money or whatever. They stayed with their commitment. Of course, after lockdown till we announced in the first week of May. So those 2 months were very, very stressful for me because you always have that sense of doubt that things can go wrong because parallel at one place there is no sports. Every day there was thing that IPL will not happen, cancel, Wimbledon cancel, so many things happened. And at the second place, the corona numbers were going up. And then you sense that what if somebody decides to rethink? Because if one investor decides to relook at this entire investment, then the entire balance gets affected. So what we therefore did is, I mean, I have to admit it was the most stressful 6 to 8 weeks for me. While I worked 17, 18 hours every day to close the round, literally I was submerged with legal paperwork, lots of negotiations, etc. My team parallelly worked on creating the technology for game streaming. So to a large extent, the fact that investors believed that we could do something to ensure company runs properly, and there was game streaming. So game streaming had not launched. So it's not that they continued because of that. I think they continued, and we completed a round because they had a big belief in the entire team of Router, in what we were aiming at. And I'm very happy to tell you that, especially what has happened in the last 2-3 months, they are very excited that we have not just created a very strong product, we are growing the fastest we have ever grown. At the same time, we are actually raising our next round of funding. We are talking to multiple funds, and it's going to be a much bigger round. So yeah, it's a very exciting. I mean, I think the and just a last line before my end, that I always read that adversities give you sometimes opportunities that would never happen otherwise. And for us, this entire situation gave us an opportunity that, I mean, we would have never launched esports in gaming because sports is so full all the time that you never get an opportunity to do it. But we got an opportunity to do it because we were pushed to a corner and we were asked to create our survival plan, and that is how things happen. So yeah, that's the story. Very, very interesting part of our story. I'll never forget these 4 5 months, and I'm very thankful to people who backed us and hopefully would back us even in further rounds.
Well, that's great news that you're moving towards the next round and hoping to raise even larger sums. And best wishes to Rooter for that. And again, the adversity bit also very, very important, because I also personally believe that the last 3 4 months, it's not just been about staying safe. It's also about, I think, a lot of us didn't really have the time to stop and reflect. Maybe you didn't have the time to stop and reflect at all, but I'm talking just from
No, no,
my
I
personal
did. Yeah,
experience.
yeah,
I'm talking
yeah,
from my
yeah.
personal experience. I was non-stop travel and covering sports round the clock, round the year. It gave me some time. It gave people like us some time to just sit back and relax and maybe look back on life and see, where we had gone wrong, where we had learned. Um, on that note, I would just like to ask you a final question. What does the future hold for Rooter? The next couple of months, we have some cricketing action coming back. You talked about IPL in such glowing terms. What can people who are on Rooter, people who are looking to get onto Rooter, expect in the next few months? What are you most excited about?
Well, couple of things. Number one, our gaming community is growing very, very fast. We are very excited to continue to build a better experience for them. Like yesterday, we were rated at 4.8, which is, I know, I mean, a lot of people don't think it's very important, but for somebody who's trying to make a product, to get such feedback from users is very, very encouraging. So first thing is that for this gaming community, we are trying to improve features. We are launching multiple features which will be far, far better than the competition, and also very socially led, which means it will be more about community than anything else. So yeah, the first thing is to continue to build the good gaming features. Secondly, uh, we are also launching esports, a lot of esports tournament on Router, which would start coming in from September. But most importantly, as you rightly said, IPL is a great opportunity for all of us to build that curve. And we have partnered Paytm. Router will be integrated on Paytm app. So we are already a part of Samsung, Bixby. A lot of other integrations are happening. So the way I see for the next 2.5, 3 months is that we are trying to improve the experience of gaming audience and sports fans by doing multiple things which will help them feel good here. Most importantly, I think this combination of gaming and esports, which is going strong, and then sports coming on top of it, should push us to numbers that we could have never imagined otherwise. And that's how things are. We're really enjoying. I mean, it's we have not had a break through the year. In lockdown, we never sat even for a week and said, okay, we'll chill, we'll put our feet up and sleep. But no, it's okay. I mean, we are blessed to have so much to do and to create this.
And finally, I'll ask you, who's going to win the IPL? I have to ask you this.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I personally feel that I even last year I said RCB, and the day I said they started playing so badly, and so there's no more a favorite team. I used to really root for Mumbai Indians because Tendulkar used to be there. Ever since then, for me, IPL is like a good match every day, and I really like the fact that you could be neutral and still enjoy the tournament. But yeah, I think Virat definitely deserves to win this cup. He is such an outstanding player, such a great leader. For some or the other reason, things have not happened for him. I think I saw the video just before our interview right now. I was watching the video of RCB, their first day or whatever they
Training,
put
yeah.
up on their social handle, and I think yeah, there are some good vibes about that team. I hope they win, and I think they will win because as a unit they're looking very, very strong.
Absolutely. Having covered Virat for a few years now, I can vouch for the fact that he's a special, special player, special batsman. Maybe the captaincy
Yeah.
element just needs to, take that to the next level. And who knows, going to the UAE away from a bit of pressure, a bit of expectations. It can get really mad when you're playing such a high pressure tournament in India. Just away in the UAE might just do it for RCB. We'll wait and watch what is in store for this IPL season. Meanwhile, if you are a sports fan and looking for an opportunity to get on a sports platform to discuss sports, talk sports, share content, esports, e-gaming, Router is the platform for you if you are not already there on Router. Would like to say thanks to Piyush Kumar, CEO and co-founder of Router, for coming on this first episode of the Curveball. Thanks, Piyush. I hope you had a nice session, interesting session here.
I will never forget this hour, Chetan. I don't know. I've never spoken about the journey and what Router stands for in such a detailed way. Sometimes, as I said, you don't get time to and you don't get the right questions. And I think you have been fabulous. Whatever I had heard about you is so true. Thanks, Amrit, for connecting us, and I look forward to it and possibly many more conversations in future and maybe a lot of work that we can do together.
Hopefully, and that's something that I look forward to as well. And again, a shout out to Amrit Raj, who is the CEO and co-founder of Big Bang Social. We'll also have him sometime. He's a little too busy right now developing his own platform, but we will probably have him here as well. He's a huge sports fan, my childhood friend as well. Meanwhile, well, this is the first episode, but we'll make sure to put this episode on all the major podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Audio Boom, and others, as well as on YouTube. Do subscribe and follow, share, and leave your comments. Any and every feedback is welcome. Until next time on the Curveball, goodbye, stay safe.